coding theory, computer graphics. Some of the core and elective courses have a practical component consisting of computer-based programming exercises that implement algorithms and techniques taught in the course. To give you some hands-on experience, the program has a project at the 4th semester. After completing the program, you may join research institutes, industry or teaching profession at any level based on your interest and aptitude. You can join the program during the January admission cycle or the July admission cycle. So what are you waiting for? You go to IGNOU Summer Admission Portal and register yourself.
Welcome learners to this interactive TC session on the topic sampling methods in research. Those who are doing any research activity specifically in the field or discipline of education. Now this session is meant for such researchers, but then those who are doing any research activity apart from the discipline of education, like any field in social sciences, management sciences, use of this session on sampling methods in research. Why? Because this is one of the steps that any researcher will go through when they do any research activity or when they undertake any project. So with this small introductory remark, I would like to welcome all the participants and learners once again to this session. Now, let me also give you a brief understanding about what we will cover in this session. Basically, we will talk about some of the basic premises, basic theoretical understanding of this topic, the sampling styles, sampling methods. Then we will also discuss about, when we talk about the sampling methods, you will come across two sampling methods. One, the probability style of sampling. The second is the non-probability style of sampling method. So we will discuss on that, the probability and non-probability sampling methods. Then use in each of these sampling methods, like the non-probability and probability sampling. So this is in brief about the topics, the ideas which we will cover in this session. So let us start the discussion with what we call the sampling. Now, if you look at this slide, it is given like what is sampling. So we will start with what is sampling, and there is a brief text idea given on this slide, which says the selection of units or members from the sampling frame. This is a very simple kind of an explanation which we can give on this sampling. So what does that mean? The selection of units or members from a sampling frame. So we will have a sampling frame kind of a idea. Now, say for example, if it is like 1000, so then from that 1000 members, how about sampling? Now let us take further this idea to something called the population. Then we will come back to what we call the samples in a research work. To discuss that, I would again like you to see the slide which is discussing about what the population is about. Now see, when we undertake any research work, say for example, let me make it very simple and brief that way. Suppose the ideas from the discipline or the field of education. So when we undertake a study, say for example about the 10th class students studying in Delhi. So there are multiple schools, many number of schools in Delhi. It comprises of government, private, semi-private, all those. So, and the whole number of students who are studying in the 10th standard is going to be the population of your study. So that's why you are seeing the explanation like on slide, any group of individuals that has one or more characteristics in common and that are of interest to the researcher. So if you specifically, if you look on this slide, you will see that these are group of individuals that has one or more characteristics in common. As I was saying, if it is a 10th class student, see 10th class students, all the students will be studying in 10th class. That is going to be one of the major characteristics. Then there are other characteristics also, like age may be almost the same, the students studying in the 10th class. There can be minor variations, but almost they carry the same age. So the level of study, a class in which they study, their age group, these are some of the characteristics which are common among that group of individuals. So such group of individuals who carry common characteristics or some kind of features are considered to be population. You will also see on the slide one more kind of an explanation, and it says a group of individuals with at least one common characteristics which distinguishes that group from the other individuals. Something very similar. So if the students are studying in 10th class, then the students studying in 9th class will be entirely different because their classes are different. So that way also we can apply. So let me just conclude that any group of individuals who have a common characteristics is considered to be the population of the study. I have given only one example to explain the population. Let us move further and see to the idea of sample. Now, as you see on this slide, it says a small proportion of the population that is selected for our research work, observation and analysis. It can be all the research activities related to that research work. So what happens, a small proportion, a small group of individuals we will be selecting from the entire population. Now let us again bring back that idea of 10th class students studying in Delhi. Now, as you know, it is going to be very difficult to go out to reach the entire 10th class students if you are doing researching on the 10th class students. It is practically sometimes very difficult. So what we do, we select a group of individuals among that population and we will only study that group. Say for example, if the population is 10,000 or 1 lakh, it's an hypothetical example. If the population is 10,000, then it's sometimes very difficult to study the 10,000 students. So what we will do, we will select some 500 students or 1,000 students from that 10,000 students. Now there are some criteria on which how this has to be selected. There are some mathematical formulas also which would help us to select how many samples has to be there in our study. So this is what the sample is about. So population, the entire individuals who have some common characteristics, and as a representative of that population is what we call the sample. Let us move forward. As I said, so one side of my presentation is over, like we started with population and we explained about these samples. Now let us move on to what the idea of sampling methods. I have already given you some hint, like we have two styles of selecting these samples from a population. How is that and what is that method? One, the probability sampling method, the other is the non-probability sampling method. Now let us understand what is these two types, like the probability and the non-probability. Like on the slide you will see the probability sampling method, the researcher selects the procedure of randomization to select the sample so that each member or unit of the population has equal chance of being selected in the sample. On the other side, non-probability is the unit the sample is selected at the discretion of the researcher. Now, uses a non-random sample from the population you want to research based on specific criteria such as convenience. It's very simple that way. See what happens if you have 10,000 people. How you will give a probability in such a way that each individual get a chance of being selected in our sample. So if you is in our research such that each individual gets equal chance of getting selected in the sample. If that is the case, such a sampling method is known as probability sampling method. On the other side, let us not give any chance. Let us select the samples based on our discretion, our ideas. Then nothing is coming into there. But of course, there are some criteria on which we will select, but we will not give equal chance of that kind of probability to each of the individuals involved in that particular population. So if you are doing that way, like when we select the samples based on the researcher's discretion, based on some criteria, where the probability of selecting each individual is not taken care of, then such sampling method is known as non-probability method. So let me sum up that discussion on probability and non-probability. Probability is a method, probability sampling is a method where each individual, while on the other side, non-probability is something where the randomization procedure is not followed and the samples are selected based on the researchers' discretion, and it is based on some criteria. I hope you understood this idea of probability and non-probability sampling. Let us again take this discussion forward and see what are the different styles of probability and non-probability sampling techniques, because there can have different styles of selecting, keeping in intact that idea where each individual get a chance being in the sample. So that is what we are going to see now. For that, we will start with the different types of probability sampling methods. Now, again, I would request you to look on the slide where it shows the different types of probability sampling. Now, if you see, it's very clear, like simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, area or cluster sampling, multi-stage sampling. Now we will just briefly understand the idea of all these in a very, as I said, in a crisp form. What is that? See, the first one was simple random sampling. So you should always keep in mind that each individual gets equal chance of being in the sample. Now in simple random sampling, what happens? Each member or unit of the population has equal or probable chance of being selected in the sample. This is one of the most common method of randomization. So we just randomly, suppose there are 5,000 people. Among the 5,000 people, you just pick some people from here and there, so that when we do that way, each individual have an equal probability of getting into. Now a little bit advanced or more systematic way of is like we use some lottery method, which is one of the common kind of style is that is used in simple random sampling. So this is simple random sampling. It just aligns with the probability sampling idea where equal chance for each individual is assured or made sure. Coming to the second, systematic sampling, as you see on the slide. Now here what happens, the units of the population in the sample are selected from a list made in alphabetic or some other order. So what we do, we will have the population, we will arrange the population in some order, then we will again make use of the random sampling style. Now if there are 5,000 samples, which all samples you will take, whether it is a 10th sample, 20th sample, 30th sample, or whether you will start with the 13th sample, 23rd sample, 33rd sample. So to help you to decide that number, we have a very simple small formula. As you see on the slide, it is like frequency is total n divided by Sn, where f is the frequent interval, n is the total number of population, and Sn is the required number of samples. So you just put in the numbers and you will get where you have to start and where you have to end in selecting the sample. So this is systematic sampling. Some systematic method is followed. By that I mean some frequent intervals are fixed and accordingly we will select. The next is stratified random sampling. Now you will see random from within certain strata or subgroups within the population. To select samples from strata, simple random procedure is used. Now what happens here? We will make some groups. Say for example, if we are working on the state of Delhi, what we will do, we will make some groups like north, east, south, west. Say for a simple, very simple example. So we have made some groups like 4 regions, north, south, east, west. Now from each, and from each strata, each group, you will select people using select samples using the random procedure. Here also all the individuals involved in the population has equal chance of getting selected. The next is area or cluster sampling. How it is done? This is employed when the population is too large and it is geographically scattered. Cluster or area sampling is used. Now the other idea is when the population is too much or is very large or infinite kind of thing. Like the country as an example, and it is very geographically scattered. So what you will do, you will make clusters. Like as I said, in the case of Delhi, sometimes we have 4 regions. The same can also be done in the case of if you are using cluster sampling. There are different ways of doing that. So the only idea is the area has to be very big, the population has to be large also in area or cluster sampling. Let us move further and see the final probability sampling method, which is multi-sampling style. And what it says, sampling done at different stages, which you define as per the objectives of the study. Used when research involves large units of population and difficult to access them, spread across a large geographical area. Something which is very similar to what we say the multi-stage sampling. Now, if it is, if you do a country-wide kind of a research, what we will do, we will select the states first. So one stage, select a couple of schools like private, semi-private, urban. So that is the third sampling coming into. So the samples are selected at different stages. If that is the case, we call it as multi-stage sampling. So these are the major probability sampling styles, sampling methods. Now let us move on to the different styles of the non-probability sampling methods. And as you see on this slide, there are major 4. One is convenient sampling, which is otherwise called incidental sampling. The next is quota sampling. The next is purposive, or sometimes we call it as judgmental sampling also. The final one is snowball sampling. Let us see again in a very brief way what is the idea of all these non-probability sampling styles. In probability sampling, we give equal chance of being selected in the sample, but in non-probability sampling, we don't care about equal chance of getting included. Of that, so that idea carries with all the non-probability sampling methods. The first one is a population which are incidentally or conveniently available to you. So don't think about the randomization here. We don't give stress to each of the individuals being selected. Say for example, if I am teaching in a class, maybe 10th class, so my research is something regarding the 10th class students. So I don't have to look for the entire population in that state or district. More convenient for me. So only my convenience I am considering there. And the samples, of course, since that is based on 10th class students, I will just select some samples from my 10th class where I am teaching, and the rest data collection will be done from that sample. So that is one, the convenient sampling. The next is quota sampling, and what it says, what is the idea? Selection of units of population, as you see on the slide. selection of units of population within each strata based on the judgment of the researcher, and selection of a predetermined number or proportion of units called quota, which is similar to, as you see on the lower side of this slide, it is very similar to what we call the stratified sampling, but randomization is not required. So in stratified sampling, we give equal representation, equal chance for being selected. But in quota sampling, it is just similar to stratified sampling. We will make quotas subgroups, but we don't give the probability for each individual. So that's why it is said it is very similar to what we say the stratified sampling. So you make some groups, make some stratas. From that strata, you just collect your data. So this is what the quota sampling. Now the next one is purposive judgmental sampling. Now what it says, selection of units based on the purpose objective of the research, and it relies on the judgment of the researcher to select the units based on like some examples like people, cases, organization studied. So it is again like it is based purely on the purpose of the researcher. Again, something very similar to convenience sampling. Let us see, my purpose of research is to learn about the researchers working in some university or some organization. So what I'll do, my purpose is, so if you are selecting that way, again we are not giving randomization. We don't give focus or stress on randomization. They are available there. My purpose is to study researchers. So I'll just select the researchers from that particular area or from that particular class. So that is purposive sampling. Now let us the final one, which is the snowball sampling. Now when it is used when the population you want to research is hard to reach, or there is no existing database or other sampling frame to help you find them. Now you will also see some of the examples, like it is clearly written socially marginalized groups such as drug addicts category. So what is the idea? The whole idea is the researchers or the samples we are looking for, they are very hard to reach. They are not available everywhere. Like if it is school or higher education, it is available across the country. But these kind of categories, like some socially marginalized group, homeless people, drug addicts, such people are very hard to find. Like, so wherever they are available, we will go to them, we'll collect. So we cannot find all the drug addicts in a district or in a state. So wherever they are available, we'll go to them, we'll collect data from those people. So this is what the snowball sampling is. So with this, I have completed all the non-probability sampling methods also. So with this, I would just wind up. I suppose you had made an understanding about the different sampling methods. I would just sum up what we have discussed. We started with the population. It says about all the individuals of a study, then a particular population. From that population is what the sample is. When we select the sample, we look for giving equal representation to each of the individuals. Then such a sampling style is called probability sampling. And if you are not giving stress on the probability of giving equal representation to each of the individuals, we call it as non-probability sampling methods. Now in probability sampling, we have probability, we have discussed. So with this, I would just like to wind up this session. Thank you for listening to this lecture. Thank you.